Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're digging into one of the greatest stories in all of science. It's a story about how one brilliant astronomer, armed with a mountain of data, completely overturned thousands of years of thinking about how the cosmos works. We're talking about Kepler's laws and how they took our picture of the universe from a tangled, chaotic mess and turned it into something elegant, simple, and predictable. So let's jump right in. So take a look at these two models. On the left, that's the universe as we used to see it. This crazy, tangled web of circles with the Earth right in the middle of it all. It's complicated, it's messy, and as we now know, it's just wrong. But on the right, that's the universe we know today. It's simple, it's elegant, and the sun is right where it should be, at the heart of the system. So how in the world did we get from the mess on the left to the simplicity on the right? Well, that journey is really the story of one man, Johannes Kepler. Here's our game plan for today. First, we'll take a quick look at that old universe in circles. Then we'll get to the main event, Kepler's 3 elegant laws. We'll see how you can actually put these laws to work, and then we'll bring in Isaac Newton, the guy who finally explained the why behind it all. After that, we'll uncover a kind of hidden superpower in these laws, and we'll finish things off with a quick pop quiz to see what you've learned. Okay, so first up, a universe in circles. I want you to try and imagine a time when everyone, and I mean everyone, believed that the Earth was the dead center of everything. For over 1,500 years, that was the reality. And to explain the weird looping motion of the planets in the sky, astronomers built these incredibly complex models with circles spinning on other circles. It was, a geometric masterpiece in its own way, but it had a huge flaw. It could predict where a planet would be, but it had zero explanation for why. And this is where Johannes Kepler steps onto the scene. This guy was absolutely obsessed with finding a simpler, more elegant truth. For 20 years, 2 decades, he slaved away over the most precise astronomical data that had ever been collected, all from his mentor, Tycho Brahe. He was hunting for a pattern, some kind of mathematical harmony that would finally unlock the secrets of the planets. And what he found was more beautiful and way more revolutionary than anyone could have imagined. So Kepler's first law was a total bombshell. He basically stood up and said, hey, you know those perfect circles everyone's been in love with for centuries? Yeah, they're wrong. Planets, he said, don't move in circles at all. They move in ellipses, which are basically just squashed circles. And get this, the sun isn't even at the center. It's off to the side at one of 2 special points called foci. That single idea just shattered the old model and opened the door for a whole new way of thinking. And you can actually picture an ellipse really easily. Imagine sticking 2 pins into a piece of cardboard. Those are your foci. Now take a loop of string, put it around the pins, and then use a pencil to trace out the shape while keeping the string tight. That shape you just drew? That's an ellipse. And that's exactly the path a planet takes, with the sun sitting right at one of those pins. Now, Kepler's second law can be a little bit of a head-scratcher at first. It says that if you draw a line from the sun to a planet, that line will sweep out equal areas in equal amounts of time. Okay, what does that mean? Well, think of it like this. The planet is painting a slice of its orbit as it moves, and the size of that slice, the area, is always the same for, say, a 30-day period. So what does that tell us about how the planet is actually moving? Well, it means the planet's speed is always changing. When the planet is closer to the sun, that slice of the orbit is short and fat. So to cover that same area, the planet has to move faster. And when it's farther away, the slice is long and skinny, so the planet moves slower. So yeah, our own planet Earth is constantly speeding up and slowing down throughout the year. It's moving a little faster in January and a little slower in July. Okay, and now we come to Kepler's third law. This is where the real magic happens. It's a simple, beautiful mathematical rule that connects how long it takes for a planet to orbit the sun, its period, to its average distance from the sun. It's like a cosmic rule book that the entire solar system follows. This one equation that governs the motion of every planet, all the way from Mercury to Neptune. But these laws aren't just, abstract ideas. They are incredibly powerful tools. That third law, especially, allows us to calculate things about orbits with amazing precision. Let's actually try it out with a real-world example just to see how it works. Okay, let's say we need to figure out how long it takes for a satellite to orbit the Earth. We can actually use what we know about our moon to figure it out. So, step 1, we list out our knowns. We've got the moon's period and orbital radius, and we know the satellite's orbital radius. Step 2, we just take Kepler's third law and rearrange the formula to solve for the satellite's period. And finally, step 3, we plug in the numbers and let the math do the work. And the answer we get? About 1.93 hours. A simple law gives us a precise, real-world answer. Pretty amazing. So Kepler's laws were just monumental. They told us how the planets were moving, but they didn't tell us why, right? What was this invisible force reaching across space, keeping the planets locked in these elliptical paths? Well, to answer that question, we have to bring in another giant of science. And that giant, of course, was Isaac Newton. He was the one who realized that the same force that makes an apple fall to the ground is the exact same force that keeps the moon orbiting the Earth and the Earth orbiting the sun. He called it gravity, and it was the final, missing piece of the puzzle. You see, Newton understood that without gravity, a planet would just fly off in a straight line. Gravity provides that constant inward pull, the centripetal force, that bends its path into an orbit. And here's the most amazing part. Using his law of gravity and his laws of motion, Newton was able to derive Kepler's third law completely from scratch. He proved it mathematically. That was a game changer. It took Kepler's laws from being just a description of observations and turned them into a fundamental law of nature. But Newton's work did more than just explain why Kepler's laws worked. It actually revealed a hidden power locked inside of them. That new equation he came up with, t squared equals a constant times r cubed, well, that little constant turned out to be the key to something incredible. I mean, the proof is right there in the data. Just look at this table. You've got 5 different planets, all with completely different distances from the sun and different length years. But when you look at that last column, when you cube their orbital radius and divide it by their period squared, you get almost the exact same number for every single one. It's a stunning, beautiful confirmation of the law. So what is that mysterious constant number? Turns out it depends on only one thing: the mass of the big object in the middle being orbited. And this is the hidden power of Kepler's third law. It means if you can measure how long it takes for something to orbit something else and how far away it is, you can calculate the mass of that central object. This is how we know the mass of our sun. It's how we weigh Jupiter and other stars and even entire galaxies. We can weigh the universe without ever leaving home. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. So now it's time to see what's stuck. We're going to do a quick 2-question pop quiz just to check your understanding. You ready? All right, first question. According to Kepler's second law, a planet moves fastest in its orbit when it is A, farthest from the sun, or B, closest to the sun. Think about it for a second. And the correct answer is B, when it's closest to the sun. Remember that equal areas and equal times rule? To sweep out the same size area when it's close to the sun, the planet has to cover a longer part of its orbital path, which means it has to be moving faster. Okay, one more. This one's about the third law. If you've got 2 satellites, and satellite A is twice as far from a planet as satellite B, what can you say about its orbital period? Is it going to be A, shorter, or B, longer than satellite B's period? And the answer is B again. It will be longer. Kepler's third law makes this crystal clear. The farther away an object is, the longer it takes to complete an orbit. It not only has a longer path to travel, but it's also moving slower. So a bigger orbit always means a longer year. You know, the story of Kepler's laws is really a story about the power of simplicity. We went from this messy, complicated picture of the universe to a simple, elegant one based on just a few rules. It's a great reminder that science is always pushing toward finding fewer rules that can explain more and more phenomena. And it makes you wonder, what are the complex things we're trying to figure out today that are just waiting for their own Kepler to come along and find the simple, beautiful law hiding underneath? Thanks for watching.